But we are, after all, the United States of America. So what is it that unites us? Truth and freedom.
Shutdown day 9. Will there be deal or no deal? The president getting frustrated that he stayed behind us, ready to work.
He says, I'm in the White House waiting for the Democrats to come on over and make a deal on border security.
The sheriff in the county where a police officer was tragically killed says Corporal Singh's death could have been prevented.
The Democrats, they keep saying they want border security, but they don't. They want open borders. It's time for them to understand what's happening to us.
At least 6 people are rushed to the hospital overnight after a jet bridge collapsed at Baltimore's biggest airport. Officials say those hurt should be okay.
An unnamed foreign company is fighting to get the Supreme Court to weigh in on a mysterious grand jury subpoena.
Sources have indicated it involves special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation.
I just want to purchase something.
President, he's a racist.
A bald eagle goes rogue at the Cotton Bowl.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Okay, kids, if your parents, are up and make them make you bacon and lots of bacon. I know my kids, all 7 of them will be eating bacon this morning because they do every morning. I'm serious. And one of my goals, New Year's resolutions, is to make and eat more bacon in 2019.
Make and eat more bacon.
You started off really well.
This is a resolution you can actually follow up on. I like the
resolution. Might be one of the few we can
actually
actually follow up on. So happy National Bacon Day here from Fox and Friends on Sunday. You would expect nothing less.
I've mentioned a big guest coming up.
That's okay. Yeah. That's all right.
Anthony Scaramucci starting out.
Yeah. Scaramucci's going to be on the show. Franklin Graham, Tom Homan, Rudy Giuliani, Randy Richardson. This is a huge show today, so you got to stay with us.
Yeah, and Randy obviously is a sheriff out in Newman, California. That is where Officer Singh lived and tragically died Christmas night, pulling over what turned out to be an illegal immigrant on a DUI stop. Should have been a routine stop Christmas night, just hours after he posed for that photo we've been showing with his now widow and 5-month-old son. This is a story that has now captivated a lot of people because it has put front and center the issue the president's been talking about since the campaign, which is cracking down on illegal immigration. A lot of Democrats want to dismiss it, say it's not a big issue, it's not a crisis, as the president says, and then you see a tragedy like this, and it really grabs you by the lapel.
That's exactly right, and it's the 9th day of a government shutdown in Washington, D.C. President is there, willing to make a deal, doesn't have one yet, but he is tweeting, and you talk about a tragedy. There were the tragic death of 2 migrant children on the border, which no one wants. Everyone's willing to talk about. Obviously, they were in bad shape when they went into custody, but you still do everything you can. The president took that head on, as he always does, talking about the deaths of those children and why a wall could have prevented it. He tweeted this: any deaths of children or others at the border are strictly the fault of the Democrats and their pathetic immigration policies that allow people to make the long trek thinking they can enter our country illegally. They can't. If we had a wall, they wouldn't even try. The two children in question were very sick before they were given over to Border Patrol. The father of the young girl said it was not the Border Patrol's fault. He hadn't given her water in days. Border Patrol needs the wall, and it will all end. They are working so hard and getting so little credit. I mean, the president feels like he's got to emphasize that those in the so-called mainstream media never talk about, which is Border Patrol agents didn't kill these migrant children.
Of course not.
But neither did the Democrats, by the way.
Well, they created policies that incentivize illegal immigration. Not saying they killed them.
Democrats are not
but
to
the
blame
policies
for
are dumb.
being killed. Let's be clear.
The point,
I didn't say that.
But
That's
the
what the
point is,
president said.
They're policies. It's different than people.
Right. The point is we want to have compassionate policies. And is it compassionate to have policies that incentivize people to bring children as a free pass to get in it? Because it's easier. In fact, if you're a smuggler, they're actually giving you giving the immigrants that are coming over a lower price to bring them over if they bring a child with them, because they're more likely to get over the border and help others get to stay in the country as well. So children are definitely being used as pawns in this, and they're dying. And by the way, it's not just dying. 30% of girls are sexually assaulted, 20% of boys. This is a very dangerous journey, and the compassionate thing to do would be to stop this.
Look, where the president is right in that tweet is about 95% of it, where he's pointing out that there's this incentive to come across the border because people think they can didn't get here illegally. They'll be helped if they have children. Maybe they're more likely to get through on various grounds. And to back up President Trump, you had then President Obama years ago, when the Central American migration started with caravans a few years back, said you have to stop bringing your children. This is not the way to do it. President Obama said it then.
Yeah.
And
but his
no one on the left
policies did
screamed
nothing.
about it.
But his policies actually encouraged.
But I just think this
come over.
president doesn't need to take the extra step of saying, the kids who died, it's the Democrats' fault.
Listen,
how do you get
the
the Democrats? How do you get to the Democrats to the table to negotiate when you accuse them of being to blame?
Because if you're
by
in
pointing out the
Hawaii-
failure of their policies, which is what he did, which is there's an op-ed in the New York Post by Michael Goodwin, which basically makes the president's argument. The title of that op-ed is, "Building the Wall Will Prevent More Tragedies at the Border." Here's what Michael Goodwin argues, echoing the president. He says, walls, after all, are not just barriers. They are also deterrents that can dissuade would-be migrants from even attempting to reach the U.S. The shutdown has exposed the hollow core of the Dems' insistence that they support border security while opposing a wall. The contrast is sharp. Trump sees morality as putting Americans first, while Pelosi sees morality as offering a better welcome wagon for those who come here illegally.
Well said. That's true.
Very well said,
Yeah.
which is effectively the president's position here. Build a wall, that's moral. Nancy Pelosi says, no, open borders are moral.
Right.
It's immoral to build a wall. It's expensive and it's ineffective, all of which are untrue.
Period. End of sentence. Then you don't need to say you've got blood on your hands. Kids died because of you.
I didn't see blood
That's
in my
right.
hands.
Okay.
Well, the murder of a California police officer is actually reigniting this conversation in a way I think that maybe the Democrats didn't predict when this shutdown started. Here is Stanislaus County Sheriff Adam Christensen. He says the cop's death could have been prevented. Take a look.
Law enforcement was prohibited because of sanctuary laws, and that led to the encounter with Officer Singh. I'm suggesting that the outcome could have been different if law enforcement wasn't restricted, prohibited, or had their hands tied because of political interference.
And now Kevin De Leon, a former state senator, the guy who actually wrote the sanctuary legislation, he responded to what the sheriff said.
Yeah, and it was a radio interview. What he said was the type of tone and attitude that Sheriff Christensen has taken instills fear and panic in all immigrant communities. So what I read from that is Kevin De Leon not taking responsibility for the sanctuary policies that a law enforcement official, not a pundit on the left or the right, a law enforcement official is saying helped lead basically to Corporal Singh's death.
How frustrating.
And then talks about the tone against illegal. Come on. They take responsibility.
It's frustrating that he thinks he can speak for illegal communities, for illegals who are here in the country.
That's his instinct, to defend illegal immigrants.
But that's fine. But even if he does that, why would he think that it would be in the interest of people who are here illegally but working to have criminals in their community? It's wrong all the way around. It's not fair to the police officers. It's not fair to the citizens of this country. It's actually a bad deal for illegals who are getting conflated with a lot of these
it's a
gang
bad deal
members
for
that are
legal
coming over.
immigrants too, who have their jobs taken.
Yeah, exactly. What about the fear and the panic and the life-altering realities?
All the way around.
Citizens, well, most especially, number one, if you're putting America first, citizens are the ones who came here lawfully or are here lawfully. The laws apply to them first and foremost. And Don Rosenberg, the son killed by an illegal, his son was legal, had a pretty powerful perspective on this. Listen.
They don't care about us. They don't care that their policies and their laws are killing people. And maybe if it happens to them, it will stop the killing. I've done what I've been doing. I can't bring my son back. What I've hoped all along is that my son's death would save other lives, but it doesn't. They don't care. So it's time for them to experience the same thing.
Dan is a lifelong Democrat, by the way, Pete.
Yeah, he's pointing out, listen, Democrats build walls around their houses. They don't invite Syrian refugees into their homes. But what they say is, we want to bring illegals into your communities. We want to make your state a sanctuary state. No, you can't have a wall around your country. So the policies, we like our comfy, cozy world, but your world, you live with the fear, the uncertainty of drugs and sex trafficking and crimes and gangs and illegality, and you put cops in a place where they arrest someone, they should be referred, they never are. It's an impossible double standard.
So we want to stick with the facts and not just we're going back and forth on some of the rhetoric that politicians are talking about. Let's go to law enforcement and get their perspective. That's what we're going to do later in the program, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. The police chief out there in Newman, California, Randy Richardson, he's been very emotional. You've seen him at some of those news conferences talking about losing one of his own. Officer Singh, he's going to come on. He's going to talk about both the toll on the family and how they're doing, but also talk about these sanctuary policies.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and another story that has been barnstorming the internet and caught our eye. So there was a vape store. They sell, vaping devices. An employee there caught on camera screaming at a customer because he was wearing "Make America Great Again" hat and shirt. Watch this video.
President, he's a racist.
I just want to purchase something.
Get the off of here, man. I don't give a get out. President, he's a racist, stupid piece of. You're a racist, stupid piece of.
It's your job, your freedom. Sell me.
Get out.
Help your customer.
Talk about being triggered. So to underline Pete's point, man goes into an establishment, whether it's a vape store, a 7-Eleven, a restaurant, just because you're wearing a MAGA hat and a T-shirt, you trigger the guy behind the counter, and all of a sudden they won't serve you, they won't sell you something, and they decide to unleash a tirade, profanity.
Called them a racist, and to the customer's credit, he very calmly said, "Listen, I'm not a racist. I just want lower taxes. I like these policies." This was unhinged and crazy.
So this guy goes into the store, wants to buy something, gets denied service, so then he comes back in with a phone and says, "Well, why did you deny me service?"
Right.
This guy goes off.
So this was, by the way, in Tucker, Georgia.
Tucker, Georgia, and this Exhale City, which is the name of the store, has now put out a statement about this employee. Exhale City says, "We do not tolerate this kind of behavior from our employees. When we identified the employee at fault, we fired the employee immediately. We've also spoken to the customer and apologized. We value our clients. We treat them with respect and dignity, regardless of their political views."
Hey, at least they get some credit for stepping up, taking responsibility, and saying this is not how you treat your customers. Because you support Donald Trump, you should not be denied service. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. And to face that kind of tirade, we've seen this before.
It was absolutely freaky. And by the way, he also gave the guy a chance to recover. He's like, "Just sell me the vape product or whatever it was, and I'll just go away."
Strawberry vape.
Yeah, strawberry vape.
That's 6 ounce for my wife.
That's for my wife. So yeah, it was just crazy. So we had to play it, and it was.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why people worry whether they should wear a MAGA hat around.
I tell my kids, don't wear it at the airport. Don't wear anything like that.
Which means if you're prepared to defend yourself, you should wear it, because people need. No, really. I mean, we have to live in a world where you don't get shamed to not have a political statement. Be open and willing to. Well, I know that's fair as a mother, but I'm saying, as regular citizens, you shouldn't cower from that.
Enough is enough. All right. Meanwhile, he killed Officer Daniel Faulkner more than 30 years ago, but now Mumia Abu-Jamal could get a second chance at freedom. Really? Officer Faulkner's wife, Maureen, is here to react in an exclusive interview. You will not want to miss it. That's just ahead.
Plus, a majority of veterans and service members giving high marks to President Trump. Retired Marine Joey Jones is here to tell us why. Coming up next. A new poll by the Associated Press shows 56% of current and former service members approve of the job President Trump is doing as president. Who better to weigh in on this than retired Marine Corps bomb technician Joey Jones. Joey, thanks for being here this morning. So break down that number for us. A strong approval rating amongst vets for this president. Why?
Yeah, I think first and foremost we have to recognize that this poll happened before the Syria decision and before James Mattis left the Pentagon. That's important to note. I also think that it's important that we look at the fact that veterans and active duty service members are lumped together in this poll. I think about 4,000, but it doesn't discern how much of each. And I think today more than ever, the issues that affect the veteran community that's embroiled in the VA and the active duty community that's looking at our foreign policy, I think those two groups are very much different these days. But I think overall a Republican president, especially one that makes promises and keeps them, is going to do well among our veterans and active duty. We look at, South America, the Middle East, even parts of Asia. We look at the places we're deployed to Africa, and we see how the rest of the world lives. And when we come home, we actually have a renewed respect for what this country is, and more importantly, what it takes to keep it this way. The Republican presidents spend more on defense. They usually make better decisions on foreign policy as far as the service member is concerned, and we're going to respect that and keep that in mind when we go to the polls.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of another portion of this poll that we'll put up on the screen about what the veterans think about President Trump. 59% say he is a strong leader. 48% say he has the right temperament. Of course, the president always criticized for temperament and leadership, but veterans see through that, and they think they see something different.
Yeah, you know, you look at this issue between President Trump and James Mattis, and before I see the differences, I see the similarities. They're both cults of personality. They both are pipelists in their own way because they are a subgroup of Americans that believe in everything they say and do because of how they conduct business and the way that they stay true to their word when it comes to their policy decisions and things like that. I think that it's going to be interesting to see, and it's my opinion, that President Trump a little bit is going to have to earn that approval rating back with James Mattis gone from the Pentagon. You know, I also think that President Trump has gone a long way with things like VA accountability and the Veterans Choice, but even those two things, they sound a lot better than they are effective. I know President Trump even knows that, and we have a long way to go. Veterans Choice is a Band-Aid fix to a tourniquet problem. It's an expensive fix, too. And the VA Accountability Act, it removes the bad, but it doesn't offer a solution. So we have a long way to go with these things, and I hope that President Trump takes the next 2 years to continue to fix them.
Well, there's no doubt the implementation of Veterans Choice is an ongoing thing and nowhere near where it should be. But a lot of first steps that would never happen if it were a Democrat in the Oval Office, for sure.
Absolutely, and veterans see that.
Yeah, absolutely. They sure do. Here's another set of issues that were looked at this poll. A key number here, 52% approve of President Trump's handling of border security, a big national conversation we're having right now, a showdown 9 days in to a shutdown. Does that number surprise you, and what does it say about how this will play out?
No, not at all. I think veterans among all Americans understand the need for diversity in this country, and hard work comes from a lot of different places. I come from a town that's 78% Hispanic inside the city limits. But first and foremost is to secure this country and keep it safe for all the people living here. One thing I always preach about is the negative effects that not having a secure border has on those that are here legally and illegally, and the idea that living in the shadows is no way to live at all. Republicans have said for decades now, secure the border and we'll provide a path to citizenship. And for Democrats not to take Republicans up on that offer shows just how partisan of an issue this is. Then the fact that we're not getting $5 billion to fund the wall right now shows you that it's all politics and not policy, and that's unfortunate, and veterans see past that a lot of times.
Joey, we got to leave it there. Just one quick curveball question. Is there one issue Democrats could attempt to seize on in 2020 that would be effective with vets?
I think the VA is it. You know, looking at the VA not as a model for government-funded health care, but as a place where something like a voucher program and open it back up to the open market could be a big win for veterans and something that the Democrats could look at to change their policies.
You're totally right, Joey,
so
but knowing that space really well, it ain't happening. Joey Jones, hey,
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for your insight. We appreciate it and your service to our country.
Take
always.
care, guys.
You got it. All right, well, he killed Officer Daniel Faulkner more than 30 years ago. But now Mumia Abu-Jamal, he might get a second chance? Officer Faulkner's wife, Maureen, here to react in an exclusive interview live, coming up next.
A convicted cop killer serving life without parole may actually get a second chance of freedom. You heard that right. This week, a Philadelphia judge ruling Mumia Abu-Jamal can appeal his case yet again. This is a case going back to the 80s. Now, the former Black Panther was convicted of murdering Philadelphia police officer Daniel Faulkner 37 years ago. Jamal is currently serving, as I mentioned, a life sentence that was downgraded from death row in 2011. And joining me now for her very first interview since her husband's killer was granted these new appeal rights is Maureen Faulkner. Good morning, Maureen. It's good to have you in. I'm sorry that it's under these circumstances, but thank you for joining us. Okay. Maureen, can you tell me what your reaction is to what the judge said?
Well, I am absolutely outraged with Leon Tucker. My family, the Faulkner family, and I live out in California, and they live in Philadelphia, and we have been back and forth to court in the past year about 7 times in this case, waiting to hear a final judgment on what Leon Tucker was going to make, and of course he makes it 2 days after Christmas. It always seems like this case is around the holidays. He has no merit on this judgment. I mean, it's just, it was D.A. Castle in 1989 was the district attorney's office. He had nothing to say about Mumia Abdul-Jamal. He had no prejudice towards him. He was just the DA at that time, so I don't know how Leon Tucker made this decision.
Yeah, so here's what the judge is saying. The claim of bias, prejudice, and refusal of former Justice Castile to recuse himself is worthy of consideration, as true justice must be completely just, without even a hint of partiality, lack of integrity, or impropriety. Where's the judge coming up with this to suggest there may have been prejudice when it seems like the facts of the case are pretty clear?
I don't know where he's coming up with it, and what's going to happen is this is going to open the door for so many murderers to be able to do this and appeal a situation like this. I'm hoping that Larry Krasner will appeal it, and I will know in the next several days.
So we will obviously be staying on top of that. First of all, I don't want to forget what actually happened to your husband. I don't want you to have to relive it all over again, but I want our viewers to understand. As I understand the facts of the case, your husband's on the job as a Philly police officer and pulls over Jamal's brother for what should have been a routine traffic stop.
That's correct. And my husband asked the brother to get out of the car. He got out of the car and punched Danny in the face. Danny swung him around and started to frisk him when Mumia Abdul-Jamal was sitting in a taxi cab across the street. Ran over, shot my husband in the back. My husband turned and shot him in the chest, fell to the ground and lost his gun. And that is when Mumia Abdul-Jamal leaned over and emptied his gun into my husband. My husband writhed from side to side as the bullets hit his jacket, and then he leaned down and point blank shot him between the eyes.
Oh, Maureen.
He executed my husband.
I'm so sorry.
And
obviously.
I'm never going to let this go. I'm never going to let this go. I will continue to speak out, not just for myself, but for all survivors that go through this.
And that
I mean, this is a progressive moment that is going on in this country. I don't know what's happening.
Where you're saying judges like this are trying to say, well, maybe we should relook at it. Maybe there was bias. Maybe there was prejudice.
All over the country.
When your husband was shot in cold blood.
Yes, all over the country. They're reducing sentences on murders. They're allowing them out of prison, and it's wrong. It's so wrong.
Maureen, I got to ask you one thing, other thing, which has been going through my mind as I was preparing for the interview, is as you described this routine traffic stop, which became such a tragedy, same thing happened Christmas night with Officer Singh, very similar, in Newman, California. An illegal immigrant comes in and kills him on a routine stop, and there are some Democrats who are not even speaking out about it.
I know. It's so, people think it's so not politically correct to talk about illegal immigrants. Well, guess what? You let them into our country, they're not documented, then there is going to be crime. There's going to be murders, there's going to be sex trafficking, there's going to be robberies and everything else. I truly believe that. If you want to come to our country, and to the United States, I have no problem. Just do it in a legal way, and a proper way, and pay taxes.
Very well said. And Maureen, we certainly salute you, your courage, your bravery in speaking out. I understand, as you laid it out a moment ago, you just don't want anyone to forget what really happened, and we'll be staying on top of this, as I mentioned, as we see this potential appeal coming up. Is there a final thought you have?
Well, my final thought is I just want one word to Judge Leon Tucker. I hope you can sleep at night with the decision you made, because you know it was not the right one.
Maureen Faulkner, that'll have to be the last word. We appreciate you coming in, and especially I know it's got to be difficult over the holidays. You mentioned this decision comes in right around Christmas, but we do hope you have a happy new year and that this comes out the way you want it to in 2019. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in. All right. Are they waging a religious test against Catholics? This is something we're talking about this morning. Kamala Harris and Mazie Hirono, two Democratic senators, are now challenging a judicial nominee from the president because the nominee belongs to a Catholic organization. Well, Mike Huckabee is pretty direct and blunt about this one. He says it's bigotry, plain and simple. He is live next.
Happy New Year, Governor.
No, he's on Twitter saying he's got a black-eyed pea recipe.
Ed rocks the show.
He does. He does. It's so
Ed
true.
rocks the show.
What's this recipe you have? It's National Bacon Day. We're trying to talk about bacon. You're talking about black-eyed peas or something on Twitter?
Well, you got to have black-eyed peas on New Year's. So in my tweet promoting my appearance on the show, I just mentioned that I've got a great recipe for black-eyed peas. People who grew up in the North don't get it, but I'm telling you, it's one of the great staple
Governor,
foods
I don't think I've ever
world.
had black-eyed peas, so I'm going to need to try yours.
Come on to Cooking with Friends and make it for us.
Tweet out the recipes so people can get it so we can talk about
I'm sorry, Governor. I apologize. But on to the news of the day.
You are a deprived man.
I really, you're not the first person ever to say that, Governor. Shutdown day 9. Where are we on this standoff between the president and Democrats over the wall?
Well, I don't think the Democrats want to come to the table. They're not interested in opening the government back up because for them this is all about posturing. It's about politics. It's about Nancy Pelosi maintaining the position to be the speaker. And the sad thing is we could have resolved not only the border issue but DACA and a lot of things if they had simply done what they said on many occasions they wanted. But when they actually were offered it, they decided they didn't want it after all because it did not satisfy their political interest, even though it satisfied a resolve of a real crisis that we have going. I hope the president stands his ground. I think the American people at some point are going to open their eyes, even the crazy ones, and they're going to realize that the Democrats aren't interested in solving this problem. They're interested in prolonging this problem. Anything they can do to try to make the president look bad, they will, but increasingly, surely there are enough Americans with at least double-digit IQ who can understand what the Democrats are doing.
Governor, is the president doing enough? I mean, he's tweeting, but should he be doing more to get the message out? I mean, he's there in Hawaii, there in Bermuda, there in all these other places. Should he be doing more?
You know, if my advice to the president were going to get to him, it would be this. Do a nationally televised address in prime time. Lay out the whole situation. Just lay it out and remind people that we have legal immigrant police officers being murdered in cold blood because we don't close the border. Remind them of what your last guest just talked about, and that this is not about racism. This is not about trying to keep people out of the country. We welcome immigrants because immigrants made America a truly magnificent place on earth. But this is about doing the same thing Nancy Pelosi does every night in her home. She locks her door. I guarantee you it's not wide open. People don't climb her wall that she has at her house and just walk in and make themselves a sandwich. They just don't. And I guarantee you she's surrounded by armed guards wherever she goes.
She is.
And the president needs to just lay out the hypocrisy here.
Governor, you lay out the stakes very clearly, but there are Democrats like Hakeem Jeffries who just don't want to make a deal with the president. Watch.
We are not going to allow the American people to be held hostage to a $5 billion or somewhere south of that ransom note in order to build a ridiculous border wall that's not going to make anyone safe.
Ransom note, ridiculous border wall.
Yeah, the same Democrats who supported $50 billion earlier for border security, and the same Democrats who didn't say a word when Barack Obama loaded pallets of pure green cash American dollars and dumped it off into the murderous terrorist regime of Iran. I just don't even understand how any American can hear the Democrats and believe they have any credibility on this issue, any whatsoever.
Governor, we're seeing that Democrat Senators Mazie Hirono and Kamala Harris have made comments, basically, I think, waging a war against Catholics, saying that certain nominees for judgeships are not qualified because they are members of the Knights of Columbus. What do you make of this?
Well, it's bigotry. It's blatant bigotry on the part of these senators. First of all, the Knights of Columbus are a terrific organization that do an enormous amount of charity. They've given over $1.5 billion, $1.5 billion in charitable causes in the last decade alone. I've marched side by side, shoulder to shoulder with members of the Knights of Columbus and the March for Life every year in my home state of Arkansas. They're great guys, and you know, to somehow smear them and besmirch their activities. I'd like to ask these Democrat senators, how come they support an organization like Planned Parenthood that was founded by a racist Margaret Sanger, who believed and pushed eugenics, which said that we should get rid of people of color because they were an inferior race. I'd like to have them explain how they can defend their support of an organization whose roots are in that blatant level of racism.
So as Rachel has pointed out, Governor, how much of this do you think has to do with the fact that this organization is openly pro-life?
Well, it should be. It's a Catholic organization.
Yeah, but
I mean, it's kind of like saying, is the Pope Catholic? Does he pray? Oh, my gosh. Well, this is an outrage. Yeah, we can't believe this. Of course they're pro-life. You know, what kind of Catholic organization? What kind of Christian organization? You know, I'm not Catholic. I'm evangelical. But I'd have to ask, what kind of evangelical would I be if I didn't believe that every life has worth and value, that every life is precious, and that there's no such thing as a child who is expendable or disposable? People are not disposable and expendable. They're priceless. And for us to believe that we can chop them up into pieces because it's an inconvenience to someone, I find that appalling. It's really, to me, uncivilized for us to ever believe that God could bless a culture and a civilization that thinks that the dismembering of unborn children is not only okay, but that it's somehow the holy grail of politics. God help us when we get there.
Yeah, and
we're there.
We thought when John F. Kennedy talked about how he wasn't going to take orders from the Pope if he was elected president in 1960, that attacks against Catholics for their religion were gone. That was many, many years ago, as you know, and it looks like it's alive and well, unfortunately. Quickly, Governor, a lighter story that caught our eye, a Politico headline saying, on Democrats' wish list as they take back the House, tech help for a clueless Congress. And we went back and one of the Facebook hearings at some of the Democrats and what they were asking Mark Zuckerberg. Quickly watch this.
Will Facebook offer to all of its users a blanket opt-in to share their privacy data with any third-party users?
Congresswoman, yes, that's how our platform works. You have to opt in to sign into any app before you use it.
Was from CNET, sort of poking fun at how they were, and it goes on and on. Now, Governor, you know, I want to be careful how I phrase this, but you're a little up there, not really up there, but a little up there, and yet you're pretty savvy on the Twitters. So what's your thought on their need for tech help?
Well, Ed, let me explain it to you. When these Democrats get on the interweb and they start goggling stuff, they may end up looking at Facebook, or they may get on the Twitter, or they may get on that Instagram, and the next thing you know, they're going to be, you know, in
talking
a
to
world
Russians.
of hurt. That's what's happening to us.
Boy, you threw on that Southern accent pretty good.
Pretty good.
Well, thank you, Governor Huckabee.
Governor, we appreciate it.
And Happy New Year to you.
You're somebody who
to
knows
you guys.
Snapface very well. So.
And don't forget those Black Eyed Peas guys.
I'll be Googling
Bad
it.
luck if you don't.
I couldn't pick them out of a lineup right now, Governor. I'll find out.
Goggle it.
Goggle it?
Goggle it.
Tweet out that recipe one
We'll
second.
eat 'em.
Goggle it.
All right.
Thank you,
sir.
Governor.
Happy New Year, Governor. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Okay, we're going to turn now to some headlines. Shocking video as a rescue helicopter spins out of control, then bursts into a fireball. The horrific crash killed all 4 people on board. The frightening scene happening near the world's longest zip line in the United Arab Emirates. The helicopter may have clipped the zip line cable on its way to rescue an injured man. The crash remains under investigation. And it turns out that El Chapo isn't the only nickname for the notorious drug lord Joaquin Guzman. The New York Post reports he has many names, like El Rapido, earned for his speedy delivery of cocaine. Others include El Jefe, or the boss. I call my husband that sometimes. And the architect. The names are spelled out in... I'm the Jefe, really. El Chapo is on trial, accused of running a $1 billion drug ring. And Indianapolis Colts cheerleaders debuting new, less revealing uniforms in 2019. It's part of the team's new focus to break stereotypes and, quote, showcase athleticism, talent, and character. The one-piece dresses will replace the traditional short skirts and bare midriff uniforms. What do you guys think about that?
Oh, it's a bad idea.
I'm going to stay quiet.
A 9-year-old shocks his mom and thousands of others when he reveals a hidden image in the Toblerone chocolate logo. Do you see it? Look closely and you can see a bear in the mountain. The mom posted her son's revelation on Twitter and received thousands of retweets. The chocolate comes from Bern, Switzerland, known as the city of bears.
That's
and
pretty
those are your headlines.
Really? That's what gets thousands of retweets?
How about the governor saying the tweeter?
The tweeter. I just looked it up. Black-eyed peas with bacon and pork looks really good.
That
It is
sounds
National
good.
Bacon Day. Maybe we should have black-eyed peas with bacon and pork
We
today.
should have had him do Cooking with Friends
Think
here
we could
for
fire
us.
that up.
Former California Assemblyman who left the state for Texas, and he joins us now. So you now live in Texas. Tell us exactly what made you want to move.
Well, certainly the handwriting was on the wall. Taxes keep going up in California. The regulations keep getting worse. And as a result, the business climate keeps getting more and more difficult. So you see a lot of small business owners, a lot of people with capital leaving California, moving to places like Texas, where they can make more money and, frankly, have more time with their families because there's a lot less red tape.
Chuck, according to the census, here are a few of the states that are growing in their population. 14% Texas, Florida, Nevada, Washington, California. We'll explain why in California. Break that down, those growth numbers, not universally low-tax states per se, but why are they growing?
Well, first of all, of the highest growth rate states, most of them are states that feature no income tax at all, no individual income tax. The other thing, though, that's interesting is that when you have states with high taxes, they generally have a fairly large state workforce. And a lot of those guys, a lot of those women are regulators. They're people that run the red tape. That's what those taxes pay for. And so it isn't just the high taxes, it's the regulations. Now, the other thing that's happened in the last 11 months, you see increasing growth in the states with low taxes. And I think a lot of this is because of the big tax cut signed into law about a year ago by President Trump. Now, a big part of that tax cut was a limitation on the state and local tax deduction that individual filers have. It limits it to $10,000 per household. Now, what this has done is it has reduced the federal subsidy for high tax states like California and New York. And so as a result, you're seeing in the states that tax less, you're seeing private sector job growth is now 71% faster than in the high tax states since that new tax law was signed into effect a year ago.
So you're now in Texas. I have a lot of friends in Texas, and they are seeing that move of Californians to Texas, but they also are concerned that while they like the people from California like the low taxes and the low regs in Texas, they're also bringing with them a lot of progressive ideas, and they're changing the state. Do you get a sense about that being a dynamic or something that's talked about in Texas?
Well, it certainly is talked about, but I have to kind of comfort and give some solace to my new Texas friends. There's been a few very interesting polls that have been done of one of California expats, and it was done by the Texas Tribune and UT Austin. And it showed by 57% to 27% that the Californians moving to Texas are conservative versus liberal. Now, that may not be the case in the Austin, which is more of a tech center, but it certainly is more so around the state. Another one there was an exit poll of the recent Senate race with Beto O'Rourke and Senator Ted Cruz. And it showed that people who moved to Texas were much more likely to vote for Senator Cruz's reelection than people who were native to Texas.
Interesting.
And Ted Cruz ended up beating Robert Francis in that election. Chuck, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. Thank you.